So we're back here for exercise 10, which is going to be the appendicular skeleton. So we covered the axial skeleton for last week's lab. This week will be the appendicular skeleton. And the appendicular skeleton is going to consist of everything that's not the axial skeleton, right? So it's going to be the pectoral girdle. We'll cover the upper limb, the pelvic girdle, the lower limb as well. And we'll talk in detail about all of those bones. So again, pretty much the appendicular skeleton is the limbs and what the bones that attach those limbs, like the pectoral girdle, to the actual axial skeleton. So I'm just going to try to quickly cover the ones because these ones are pretty easy. Most people usually know these. I have a full articulated skeleton here, so it might be a little tough in my view that I have. But let's start quickly by talking about the pectoral girdle. Oh, and really quick, I was going to tell you, so the appendicular skeleton has about 126 bones. So quite a few bones in the appendicular skeleton, but a lot of them you don't have to know the individual name of. For example, like the carpals, you just have to know the carpals. Tarsals, you just have to know the tarsals. So it looks like a lot of bones, but really it's actually not once we get down to the nitty-gritties. So for some reason, this always trips students up is the pectoral girdle. That the pectoral girdle is actually part of the appendicular skeleton. And again, remember, the appendicular skeleton is anything that is a limb or attaches the limb to the axial skeleton. So this bone here is called the clavicle, right here. And the clavicle, along with the scapula, here's the scapula right here, scapula, are going to attach the upper limb to help attach the upper limb to the axial skeleton. So again, the clavicle and the scapula are both part of the appendicular skeleton. So clavicle here, and you can palpate. If you can palpate these bones on yourself, you're more likely to remember them. So palpate your own clavicle. And some of you may have even broken your clavicle or collarbone, as they call it sometimes. So, and then you can palpate your scapula in the back. You can feel the spine of the scapula here. So palpate your own scapula to feel this on your body, and you're more likely to remember it if you can do that. So again, you can see the scapula here has this large spine that sticks up, and you can palpate that spine on your own pectoral girdle. And so sometimes it is tricky because you can actually see the scapula from here too. So the scapula here is going to be where you're going to attach the humerus, right? Here's the humerus of the arm. Let me make sure I don't want to say anything else about these bones. I don't think so. I mean, you don't get into too much detail. Again, I kind of forget because I teach 201 what you cover and what I need to cover in 201. So I'll try to make sure that I just stay to what you need to know for this course. So again, clavicle, scapula make up the pectoral girdle. Humerus, pretty easy. This is always, of course, the butt of many anatomy jokes, the humerus. So here is the humerus. So it's your upper arm bone. Again, palpate these bones on yourself. Humerus. And then from anatomical position here, remember anatomical position is this way. Okay? So you have from anatomical position, this guy's all twisted up here. So let me see if I can get this side. This side's a little better here. From anatomical position here, you're going to have on the thumb side is going to be the radius, and on the pinky side is going to be the ulna. And remember that we're always going to give you a skeleton from anatomical position. So your skeleton from anatomical position is going to have the radius and the ulna. Okay, radius on the thumb side, ulna on the pinky side. And you can do this again in your own arms. Okay, so that you know again the radius is going to run. Palpate your own radius on the thumb side and ulna on the pinky side. That usually trips up many students. Let's see. Let's go into the bones of the hand. I'm going to pull this one up here. So when you're looking at the bones of the hand, here you're going to have these short bones here, and they're going to make up your wrist, your carpals. So here's your carpals. That's all these short bones. You do not have to know the individual carpals. Then you're attached to your carpals are going to be your metacarpals. So these are all your metacarpals. And again, feel these on your own. Please palpate these on your own hand. Metacarpals. And then you're going to see these and everything but the thumb are going to be these last three bones. And these are going to be your phalanges. I don't know if any of you have seen this show, Bones, where I love the Bones. They're old shows now. But and she was looking at a baby, and she's this anthropologist, and Anna, she goes, phalanges, phalanges, phalanges. She's a forensic anthropologist. So she loves bones. So again, whenever I see a little baby, I always want to go, phalanges, phalanges, phalanges. So these are your phalanges. And every phalange or finger, every finger has 3 phalanges except for the thumb, which only has 2. So your thumb has the proximal and the distal phalanx. Proximal being, again, closest to the trunk of the body, and distal being farthest from the trunk of the body. So proximal and distal phalanx. Now, if you look at phalanx is the singular, phalanges is the plural. So, and I do think you do have to know this, yes. I just wanted to make sure that you did have to know this. So then you have, for each of the other fingers, you have to know the proximal phalanx, and then here, so the proximal phalanx is here, the middle phalanx here, and the distal phalanx here. So again, the thumb's the only one that has 2, the other have the 3, which is the proximal, middle, and distal phalanx. So those are your phalanges, and I believe that's it. We got humerus, radius, ulna, we have the carpals, metacarpals, and phalanges. So we did good there. So now I'm going to really quickly do the bones of the lower limb. I'm going to skip the pelvic girdle and come back to it in just a moment. Sorry, I know I'm always cutting off my head, but I want you to see the skeleton. So I'm going to go ahead and quickly skip to the bones of the lower limb, and then I'll come back to the actual pelvic girdle here that's going to attach the lower limb to the axial skeleton. So I'm going to pull up a leg here. And you're going to see, so this big bone is a massive bone here. Also, we call it your thigh bone, but formally in anatomy, we're going to call it the femur. So it's a bone you don't want to break. Unfortunately, my cousin just broke his femur not too long ago. So you've got the femur. Then you have, of course, this sesamoid bone here. Let me see if I'm actually going to move this. Sorry, excuse my hand covering this is my lovely videography. I know you guys are just amazed with my beautiful videography here. But I'm going to go ahead and pull this up so you can see the whole leg. So again, you've got the femur here. You have the patella. So here's the patella. And then here you're going to have the tibia and the fibula. So what's cool is that you can palpate on either side of your ankle what are called the medial and the lateral malleolus. They're these big bones that you feel like that stick up on either side of your ankle, so you can palpate those. And when you're palpating the lateral malleolus here, it's actually part of your fibula. And then when you're palpating the medial malleolus, you're palpating the tibia. So that may help you to remember that your tibia is going to be more medial and your fibula is going to be more lateral. So please palpate those on yourself, that lateral malleolus and that medial malleolus. And that will help you to remember which bone is the tibia and which bone is the fibula. Okay? Let's see. I don't think that there's anything else I need to say about those. Let's go ahead and go into the foot. And for the foot, it's pretty easy because it's very similar to the hand, and that you're going to have the tarsal bones here. So what makes up your ankle are going to be the tarsal bones here. And I believe your lab does want you to know 2 specific tarsal bones. So one of them is the calcaneus. So this bone here that's going to make up your heel is going to be the large, I hope this isn't getting too washed out here, but because it's white. But here is the calcaneus. And then you also are going to have to know the talus. It's another prominent ankle bone. So if I can get this right here, this is the talus bone here. And so the talus bone is going to articulate with the tibia. So that's why it's an important tarsal to know. So talus here, articulating with the tibia. And then here's your calcaneus, which is actually articulating, you can't see, with the talus bone. And then you have the rest of the tarsals, which are, you know, short bones here. So there's the tarsals. And the calcaneus and the talus are part of your tarsals. So they're the only two specific tarsals you have to know. So again, here are your tarsals, okay? And then here, just like you had carpals in your hand and then metacarpals, here now in your foot you have tarsals and metatarsals. So these are your metatarsals. And then up here are going to be your, again, phalanges. We don't differentiate them. We just call them phalanges again. And of course, your first toe is only going to have two. It'll just have the proximal and the distal phalanx. And then the rest of the phalanges are going to have three. So again, they'll have the proximal, middle, and distal phalanx for all of those. So that's the foot. Pretty easy in terms of the bones, most of the bones for the exoskeleton. Now, where it's going to get a little more challenging is when and so if you want, you can go to page 119. I also suggest that you open to page 169 in chapter 7. This is the newer 14th edition version, so you may have to dig through if you have an older version of the textbook. But look at, there is a figure, in this book it's figure 7.27, and it's going to show the os cocci bones. And the reason that you're going to want that is it's a little bit, believe it or not, the bones of the pelvic girdle are a little more challenging to go through than you think they're going to be, because they look like just these big bones, but they're actually made of 3 bones that are fused together. So real quick, I'm going to talk about the bones of the pelvic girdle. So you're going to have what are called the os cocci. And the os cocci are going to be, it's going to consist of 2 os coxa. So here, all of this is an os coxa, and then this is an os coxa. So your os coxa are basically your 2 individual hip bones, and they're fused in the front, in the anterior-most point, by what's called the pubic symphysis, which is this bit of fibrocartilage here. So there's the pubic symphysis here. And then posteriorly here, they're going to fuse with the sacrum at what's called the sacroiliac joint. And this is going to make sense in a minute when we talk about the 3 parts of the os coxa bones, and one of them is called the iliac bone, or the ilium. So it's going to actually articulate with the sacrum. That part of the ilium is going to articulate with the sacrum. So that's where it comes from, the iliosacral joint. It comes from that part of the bone. So that might help you remember this iliosacral joint. Let's see, what else? Is there anything else I needed to talk about before I break into this? Or the sacroiliac joint, sorry, I was saying iliosacral. It's the sacroiliac joint. So, and that tends to be a joint that causes some people some problems as they get older. You can get arthritis in that sacroiliac joint. So it's a good joint to know. So there's your sacroiliac joint. Let's go through the 3 parts of the bones that you're going to need to know. So again, the os coxa is going to consist of your 2 coxal bones, and each of those coxal bones is going to be broken up into 3 different parts. This is where I don't have a colored model for you, so it will be easy if you can follow along in your lecture text with hopefully figure 7.27 for most of you, where it breaks up the os coxa into the 3 bones. The 3 bones are going to be the ilium. The ilium is going to be most of the majority of the os coxa bone, and it's going to run all the way into part of the acetabulum, which is going to be where your femur is going to articulate. So basically, all of this is ilium. All of this is ilium, and it'll run to right about, the ilium will run to right about here. That's all this is ilium. All this is ilium. And then in the back here, all of this is ilium. Again, it runs into and then it takes up a portion. You'll see, if you look on that figure, you can see the portion of the acetabulum. The acetabulum is actually fused from all three bones. So there's the ilium. And then the pubis is easy to remember because it's going to come up front here, and the pubis bone is going to be the portion of the bone that is going to articulate up in the anterior region here with the pubic symphysis, that piece of fibrocartilage. So this part of the bone right here on back, right here, this is all pubis right here. Here and back into the acetabulum, that's all pubis. And then the ischium, okay, the ischium's actually pretty easy to remember because the ischium is going to be your butt bone, especially the ischial tuberosity. So, and this right here is still part of the pubis here. So all this is pubis here, and then right around it, kind of your halfway mark there is about where the ischium starts. So this is ischium here. All this is ischium. And the ischium consists of your ischial tuberosity. So your ischial tuberosities are your butt bones. So you can palpate those sometimes on yourself. And that's what you feel if you're sitting in a stadium too long, right? Then your ischial tuberosities are kind of pushing on the muscles below it, and that's what, makes your bum sore if you're sitting in a hard stadium or hard bench. So that is the parts to the os coxa, or the pelvic girdle. So let's really quickly talk then about, actually I'm just going to use this one, some terms to know. So, and these terms are helpful to know for your pelvic inlet or pelvic brim, and then your pelvic outlet, so that you can help differentiate between the male and the female pelvis. So if you look here, this opening up top here, and it's going to start from this sacral promontory, which is the very prominent point of your sacrum here. It's going to kind of stick out all the way around here through the tops of the pubis bone. This here is going to be the pelvic inlet, okay? And then the pelvic outlet is going to be this opening down here. There's your pelvic outlet. And this is going to make sense, of course, for talking about childbirth. Okay. So when we talk about the differences between a male and female skeleton, or male and female pelvis, so here you can actually see this is a female, and see if you can kind of identify, before you even start talking about them, some of the differences in the female pelvis. I'm sure that many of you probably know some of these differences, and especially those of you that have been through the lovely process of childbirth. And so here is actually the male. So you can tell there is a big difference in terms of the pelvic brim or the pelvic inlets, and then the pelvic outlet. So let's really quickly, briefly go through the differences in these, because I think they're pretty interesting for most people. So first off, one other an anatomical term that you have to know is this part right here, which is the pubic arch. So as we go through these. So when you talk about the male pelvis, or the male os coxae here, you're going to see that one, of course, well, actually, before you even get to that, just briefly looking at the differences in them, you can see that the male pelvis is, the female pelvis is going to be wider, and the male pelvis is actually going to kind of stick up more vertically. So the male pelvis will be more vertical. The female pelvis is going to be wider. So that's one really quick, right off the bat, easy way to identify differences between the male and female pelvis. Typically, the male pelvis will be a little bit thicker, a little bit rougher. Again, definitely more vertical. So the tops of the iliac crest sit up a little higher. The pelvic brim or pelvic inlet is somewhat heart-shaped here. So this pelvic brim is somewhat heart-shaped, if you look here, and definitely smaller than it will be in the female. And so if you can see that there. I'm trying to get that angled right. And then the pubic arch here will be less than 90 degrees or less than 90 degrees. So that's a big difference from the female. So when I show you the female pelvis here, so the female pelvis is right away really easy to see. Look at that, the pubic arch there. That pubic arch or pubic angle, pubic arch is going to be greater than 100 degrees. So really obvious to see the difference between the pubic arch here and the pubic arch here in the male. So again, the male is going to be 90 degrees or less. Female is going to be wider, usually 100 degrees or wider. So that's one quick, easy way to identify the difference. Also, you're going to have a larger, rounder pelvic inlet. So here you can see this pelvic inlet is going to be nice and large and round. And again, more, rounds than the male. I don't know how well you can see this in this video here, but trying to do my best for you. Then one of the other easy factors to see is that if you're looking at here the pelvic outlet, if you look at the sacrum is actually tilted slightly posteriorly. So in the male, you can see the sacrum here tilts in more anteriorly. So you can see that here. And in the female, to allow for childbirth, you can see that sacrum is tilted posteriorly. So that's one of the things you can see, and that's going to give you a larger pelvic outlet, much larger pelvic outlet. Okay? So you have a larger pelvic brim or pelvic inlet and a larger pelvic outlet. I believe those are the main differences. So I thought it would be kind of cool for you to actually see the differences between, and you can see that like it would be very easy for a forensic anthropologist to be able to differentiate if they have an os coxa, whether or not you have a male or female. So those are some of the, again, easy differences. So there's male, very easy to see it's male. Very, very easy to see that it's male there, and female. Okay, so I believe that is all you have to know for the appendicular skeleton. I know you do have some information to know for joints, so I will cover that in the next video. So thank you very much for enduring my videos with my head chopped off there.